Yeah, folks, in this video, we're going to talk about 30 new cards coming to Marvel Snap this week in the Team Clash game mode. Well, at least they're new in the sense that they have new text, but of course they're familiar faces like Captain America. But this new Team Clash game mode is landing in just a couple days. At least as of you watching this, I am actually recording this a week early because I'm about to head out of town for a little family trip to end the year, and I'm recording some videos ahead of time. That said, I will warn you, there may be some updated information that I have right now at the time of recording. Please feel free to drop stuff down in the comments if I get something wrong or something has changed since recording this video. But basically in Team Clash, it's a new game mode where you're going to choose a deck from one of 5 teams: the Avengers, Thunderbolts, the Guardians of the Galaxy, X-Men, and the Spider-Verse. They're each going to have 6 cards that have updated abilities and tie into their kind of team effect in some way. For instance, the Avengers are all going to have this team effect. This is just an aura that applies to the game when you're playing an Avengers deck. After you play an Avenger, give one of your Avengers their +1 power. So playing lots of Avengers can give you lots of extra free power. And then the core cards with updated abilities here, like Captain America, are often going to also play into some Avengers synergies. As you can see here, ongoing, your other Avengers here have +2 power. Now, on top of that, it seems you're going to be able to add 6 other cards of your choice to your deck, some of which will seemingly also be Avengers. If they were like an Avenger in the comics or something, they're probably going to be an Avenger in the game. I'm sure there will be some official formal lists that come out so you can see exactly which cards fit. But even though those cards won't have updated abilities, they should still work for stuff like Captain America. So you might want to add 6 other Avengers cards to your deck. And once we go through all the abilities, I'll talk about some likely Avengers that might be nice for these effects. So that said, let's go ahead and jump into these updated cards. And I'm going to keep the pace pretty fast here because we have 30 cards to get through, and I don't want this video to be like an hour and a half long. Team Clash Captain America is a 3/4 ongoing. Your other Avengers here have +2 power, and that seems really good to me, right? Like, you're going to stack up a location, you're going to get those 3 extra buffs from playing Avengers down behind Cap America, and also he's going to give +6. You know, that's 310 in total output in that location. You know, it's kind of like the ongoing Cap, but just built around Avengers. That seems like a really obvious key synergy piece that's going to be super powerful for this team. We also have Team Clash Hulk. He's a 6'11 here, so a little smaller, with on reveal +2 power for each other Avenger you have here. Again, that is going to be another +6 probably if you build your deck correctly and play it out right. Right, like, I know what's going to be correct, but that makes him a 6'17, which is actually really, really big, right? That's the sort of thing that will definitely secure a location. Just do keep in mind, you know, it's not going to be like soloing a location because he does have to go down where you have other stuff. So there could be some like commitment issues where if you already have 3 Avengers there, are you overcommitting and not able to go wide enough, or maybe a little bit too predictable for your opponent that knows you have this Team Clash Hulk as a big payoff? I think that's a consideration to make. We have Team Clash The Vision. If you have another Avenger here, you can move this, which is a nice little idea, right? But 4/7 stat line here instead of 5/9, which I think is ultimately a lot more flexible. Plus, you can kind of like play this down, proc the Avengers buff, and then move it out, so there's more space to put an additional point there, which could, you know, be a little bit harder to predict for the opponent, allow you to maximize the Avengers power buff in a specific key location, which, you know, I think if you add stuff like, say, Captain Carter to your Avengers deck, you know, having a Captain Carter follow-up where you're buffing her multiple times by like playing a Vision, move it out, play something else where she's the only target to receive the buff, could be a way to sort of multiply the power effects of those buffs. So this seems like, you know, just good, solid stat line with a useful effect for the Avengers effect. We've also got Team Clash Thor, 3/3 this time. On reveal, draw an Avenger, then shuffle Mjolnir into your deck. So a little bit you know, smaller Thor here, but the ability to just cycle into a new Avenger, making sure you have lots of stuff to play, seems really valuable. That also might allow you to lower your curve a little bit so that you have more Avengers to play throughout the game, which of course feeds into your Avengers buff. More bodies means more +1 power hits. So small, cheap stuff like this that gives you more small, cheap stuff without running out of resources actually feels really nice. I'm not even sure how much you want to draw the Mjolnir, but might be a nice bonus. Maybe you could run Jane Foster in the deck as well. Beta Ray Bill and have a kind of a little Hammers core alongside your Avengers package. I don't think Mjolnir will count as an Avenger though, sadly. We also have Team Clash Hawkeye. This is still 1/1. On reveal, if you play a card here next turn, +2 power. If it's an Avenger, repeat this ability here, which I think that to me reads like you could repeat this multiple times, kind of like Surge. So, you know, if you keep playing Avengers on to Hawkeye, he keeps getting +2, +2, +2. So instead of being capped out, you know, with a single buff, you might be able to push this guy up 1/5, 1/7, you know, 1/9, even if you're like maybe moving stuff out of the way, like with Vision. So you can start seeing this little curve coming together. And of course, that's still going to be proccing your Avengers hit every single time. So there could maybe be a little bounce package that goes in with this, but are you going to have bounce cards that are Avengers, right? Beast, probably not an Avenger. Toxin, probably not an Avenger as far as I know my Marvel lore. So it's like, what are you using to bounce necessarily? Maybe Falcon's an Avenger, but are there enough 1-drops in the Avengers pool that also play into the bounce archetype to make all this work? So I don't know, might have to be a little more honest than like a bounce deck, but still, you know, nice synergy here with everything. And I believe that's all. No, we got one more Avenger. It's Team Clash Doctor Strange. He is a 2/2. On reveal, move one of your Avengers with on reveal to this location and repeat its ability, which I don't think we have any crazy on reveals here that would be great for that. Like Hulk's probably too late. Thor might be okay, for instance, right? That's fine, but nothing crazy. That said, there are probably some Avengers with on reveals that are pretty intriguing, like, you know, Shang-Chi, likely an Avenger. Repeat the Shang-Chi ability. I saw a Gwenpool, I think, could count in as Avenger. You could have something like Wiccan, maybe, as an Avenger. That, I don't know, is Wiccan more X-Men or Avengers? I don't know. I think I saw Wiccan could be an Avenger. So, you know, there's a few on reveals that might be interesting for this. I don't think it's crazy, but still pretty intriguing. It's also a little different than something like, you know, Grandmaster with the directionality of it, because you're moving it to this location, so that could really kind of shift power around in more unpredictable ways, whereas Grandmaster's always sending something mid. You know, this is really flexible in that regard, so still seems pretty nice. So I did just list off a lot of the Avengers cards I think could be interesting, right? Captain Carter, Iron Man, Shang-Chi were the ones that jumped out to me as just like good cards that are probably Avengers that do have some play, like Iron Man, you know, with stacking buffs, really powerful. Captain Carter with stacking buffs, really powerful. Shang-Chi, just a generally good card, right? Assuming he's not banned or anything from the game mode. You know, I think you're just gonna be looking for good cards a lot of the time to fill out these decks, as opposed to necessarily like super synergistic decks. There might be some super synergistic decks that pop up, but like since your synergy is Avengers, getting a secondary package that's cohesive with the core cards feels like that might be difficult. I think you kind of want to run like tech slop or just high quality to support, as long as it fits into you know, that Avengers bracket. I think that's probably what you're going to be looking for. So ultimately, I think this one's pretty simple in a lot of ways compared to the other teams we're going to see, but I don't think that's a problem. I actually think that's a good thing. I think the Avengers are actually going to stand out as one of the better teams, although we'll recap this again at the end. All right, next up here, we have the X-Men team. They have this ability. You get +1 energy for each location where you have 3 or more X-Men, which this is written a little unusually. I would expect this to normally say you either get +1 max energy, or I would expect it to say you get +1 energy each turn. It doesn't say either of those things, but I'm fairly certain this means you get +1 energy each turn. Maybe it was just too long. I'm reinforced that idea even further because of Team Clash Professor X. This also reads you get +1 energy each turn, this time for each of your X-Men here. But either way, the idea with this deck and this team is going to be all about utilizing excess energy, and there are a few of the core cards for X-Men that are going to do that. They care about excess energy, having high energy totals. There's also stuff that has to be in the X-Men pool, I assume, like Sunspot, for instance. Surely that's an X-Men where you could just farm that excess energy like crazy. You could probably still run stuff like She-Hulk, even if she's unlikely to be an X-Men, probably an Avenger. Then, you know, still put her in your deck. I assume that works. And, you know, she's going to be free so easily. You can have some really big high pop-off turns. Maybe even like Infinite, for instance, could work. But getting to that excess energy with this ability, I will say it doesn't feel that trivial, because you have to have 3 or more X-Men in a given location, which That's kind of a big commitment, right? Particularly because if you want to do that early, like turn 1, 2, and 3, you know, play an X-Men in one spot, you got to have a pretty low curve in order to do that, which means you don't have a lot of high cost payoff stuff if you're trying to consistently hit that low curve for this ability as early as possible. There is a pretty cool turn where you play like 1, 2, 3, you get the excess energy going into turn 4, then you have Team Clash Professor X here, a 5/5 that you play into that same location on turn 4. He's then going to see 4 X-Men in that location and give +4 energy going into turn 5, plus the extra one you already have. You're going to have a 10 energy turn 5, which is like, you know, crazy amount of energy. And although you've suddenly locked into that location, it's still, you know, you got a decent number of points there, and you might have a sunspot there that scales with that energy anyway. And it's like, you're not necessarily too overcommitted, but that does kind of demand a perfect curve. So, you know, and then getting like a second location for this one where you have even more X-Men, I think that's going to be really tough as well. Even with, you know, 10 energy, you got to play 3 more cards somewhere else again to get that 1 extra energy on that final turn. It's like, doesn't really seem worth it, you know? So in a weird way, this is a really big ask, I think, for this ability. Unlike the last one where it's just like, hey, play your Avengers and this works. This has this real specificity to it, these real demands to it. It's like a real commitment issue. I don't know how much that's going to feel super worth it. That said, you know, maybe the cards themselves are still worth it, because I do think there's some pretty cool abilities here, like with Professor X. You know, this +1 energy each turn for each of your X-Men here, that's pretty powerful in and of itself, right? You just hit this with a couple X-Men, like suddenly it's a Wiccan already, basically, and it has the potential to be even higher than a Wiccan, where you're getting like +4 energy, like we talked about. So that's pretty nice. We've also got some big payoff cards here with stuff like Team Clash Cyclops. This is a 3/1. Ongoing gains power equal to the most energy you had in one turn this game. So, you know, if you do get up to like 10, 11, 12 energy or whatever for that final turn, this guy is suddenly a 3/13, which is, you know, a really big threat, of course, for a 3-drop. We've also got Team Clash Jean Grey. This is a 2/3, so it could be one of those good early cards to play down. Same thing with Cyclops, right? A curve of like Sunspot, Jean Grey, Cyclops, Professor X is like the dream spot, because you're still going to contest that super hard with Cyclops and Sunspot, and then you have all this extra energy to do other things. But how often do you hit this dream curve, you know? Jean Grey reads, the next time you get bonus energy as the turn starts, draw a card. So this helps you refill your hand if you're playing out all that little stuff. Gives you things to utilize that max energy that's gotten so high. This does feel like a pretty key card to make sure you have the resources to work with that you need. We've also got Team Clash Jubilee. This is a 4/1. On reveal, add the top card of your deck to this location. Give it power equal to your unspent energies. This is another one where the unspent energy here is a little bit weird timing, I guess. I guess if you have like 10 energy on turn 5, like we talked about, you play this down and you have 6 unspent energy, then it's, you know, you're going to summon a hopefully decent thing and then also give it +6 power. Your Sunspot's also going to gain +6. So I guess, yeah, that works out pretty well. Also, you know, just more stuff. If you've got some big things in the deck, she could still hit big. But even if she doesn't, the excess energy here hopefully helps catch up a little bit from a stat standpoint. Plus, you can kind of just save this to the end of the game as well if needed for perhaps surprise power boost. Also, this does help fill locations, though. So you might want to play this on turn 5 to get like 2 extra X-Men, play another one there, and suddenly you hit your X-Men base ability one more time. We've also finally got Team Clash Wolverine, still a 2/2. No, he's a 2/3 nowadays, isn't he? Now a 2/2 that reads, end of turn, if you have unspent energy, destroy this to regenerate it with +2 power at a location where you have an X-Man. So this is going to like keep itself in spots with X-Men to make sure that you can activate your ability as often as possible, as opposed to like isolating himself alone. Offers you some scaling per turn of +2. You know, I don't think the +2 is like crazy here, because you won't have unspent energy every turn, particularly, you know, the first few turns you're not expecting to. So maybe like starting on turn 4, 5, 6. So maybe he gains +6. It's solid, but nothing crazy. It might actually just be more important that this is like a cheap 2-drop that does benefit you in some ways. Also could kind of clear out some space. Like we said, if you lock down a location early, this could actually move out of the way to let you redevelop power there later if needed, if you don't have the kind of Sunspot or Cyclops scaling in those early locked in locations because you're trying to proc your X-Men ability. Oh shoot, we got one more card. I forgot about Team Clash Nightcrawler. This is a 1/1. You can move this once, and when this moves, give it +1 power for each of your X-Men at the new location. So again, same story here. This gives you a little bit more of that flexibility where you commit to a spot early to activate this ability, and then you can move it to another spot, kind of shift power around while still keeping maybe a couple spots with 3 X-Men active. So, you know, I will say, like, this is probably a 1/4, I guess, at max, which isn't, again, crazy or anything, but the flexibility and the fact that it's an X-Men might really be all that you need. So next up here, we have Thunderbolts. The Thunderbolts ability is pretty crazy here. Thunderbolts reveal with +2 power at locations you're losing. So you're the underdogs here. You want to be behind and then potentially dump some really big swings kind of all at once. I think, you know, in particular, sacrificing early locations with even negative power. I was thinking about like the Hood probably counts for Thunderbolts. The Hood going down and then, you know, losing that and then being able to dump like 10, 15 power all at once, you know, later in the game might be really nice. There are also going to be further restrictions in some of these Thunderbolts cards where they're kind of an inverse Crossbones, where you literally can't even play them if you're not losing. Like Winter Soldier, you can see here, is a 1/7. You can only play this at a location you're losing. So it's going to be really interesting kind of manipulating locations and power and priority to some extent. I don't think you're going to want to take it so far as to, like, you know, Viper stuff over so that the opponent's winning, but it's going to be more about like kind of waiting for key moments, maybe sacrificing one spot, maybe nudging the opponent's plays a little bit, right, with stuff like I don't know, you could even toss in like a Jean Grey, but also of course you know, examples like Nebula, like, hey, play over here with this Nebula, even if she's not a Thunderbolt, 'cause she's going to be a Guardian, I'm sure. You know, play over here, and then like I'm going to suddenly swing that location later. There's even cards like Titania, which I think could indeed be a Thunderbolt, where it's like, hey, I'm going to give you power with Titania and still be able to make, you know, a big play for that later and swing super hard off both the Thunderbolt's ability and Titania, and, you know, just playing like really powerful 1/7s and stuff. I was also thinking there are cards that are just like kind of low power in one spot, but still add a lot of power, like Claw, who's a good Thunderbolts fit. It's like, hey, you know, I'm only going to develop 4 power here. You know, I'm not going to get strong here, so I can still play later, but I'm still developing power elsewhere, maybe somewhere I've already committed and started winning. Same thing even for like Iron Man, who of course won't be a Thunderbolt. That's definitely an Avenger. But like, you know, Iron Man's like, hey, I can stay behind here right now, but still, you know, doesn't take much to suddenly flip this later. If I play a 1/9 Winter Soldier down behind this Iron Man, it's like, hey, that might single-handedly solo the location while still allowing me to stay behind for now. So kind of cards that create investment that don't pay off until later so that you can realize that payoff later all seem pretty relevant for this Thunderbolt's ability. And then of course, like +2 power is amazing. Like that's just going to add in a lot potentially. And like, hey, suddenly an extra +4, +6 from a 1-turn dump goes like a really far way towards winning that location. So we've also got in the Thunderbolts Ghost. This costs 1 less for each location you're losing, and it's a 3/6. So I mean, honestly, not terrible as a 3/6, but you know, putting this down to 2/6, 1/6, I guess even 0/6 is possible. Although there is a question about how long you want to wait to start playing stuff. Like you could theoretically wait till the very end of the game and dump everything at once. You know, you got a 0/6, a 1/7 that each become a 0/8, a 1/9. Like, it's possible, but I don't think you want to wait that long. I think if you see this as even a 2/6, there might be some good moments to play it, and certainly a 1/6 feels pretty nice. So next here we have Sentry, 4/9 still, on reveal, add a -9 power void to a location where you don't have a Thunderbolt. This, of course, a great way to potentially get behind in a spot so that you can catch it up later. This does pull in, you know, the Viper, Annihilus, very natural fit for this deck, even if those aren't Thunderbolts themselves specifically. Pretty nice here that you can just give the opponent -9 like we see with those decks normally. I will say there's like a little bit of an overcommitment problem there in some ways, where it's like, you know, if I go behind there and I want to play my Thunderbolts there, you know, after I've gone behind to get points, it's like, you know, if I'm already committing another 8 or 10 points of Thunderbolts and then -9 from my Annihilus, it's like, have I gone too hard in that spot? Might not be an issue though, just depending, you know, if you can kind of position that well, it might still work out. We also here have Taskmaster. This time a 4/0 on reveal gains power equal to your other highest power Thunderbolt, which, you know, might be a 4/11 Sentry if you get +2, which that makes this a 4/11, which certainly isn't bad at all. 44 cost card. There might also be some ways to cheese buffs or something where you get some really big Thunderbolts. I was thinking about like Red Hulk, maybe. If like Red Hulk's big, timing on that's weird though. It's a 6-drop, of course. So I don't know. There might be some actual ways to build towards this. I don't know if it'd be worth it to commit your deck that hard. You might just have to rely on the natural buffs. You know, this does say reveal with +2 power. Does that mean this gains an additional +2 power if you play it in a losing spot? I'm not sure, but you know, could it go from 4/11 to 4/13? That could certainly help even more. And then we also have Toxie Doxie, a 2/2 again on reveal. Give 2 characters in your hand +2 power. You can't play them next turn unless they're Thunderbolts. So this is actually pretty decent hand buff that again would kind of feed into the Taskmaster thing, feed into the kind of delayed payoff where you spike power later while still not developing much early, like we see here as a 2/2 is just not a big commitment early, but you get a lot of power in hand. So I kind of get that. Does lead you towards running full-on Thunderbolt decks potentially, but also, you know, if you do have that Iron Man or whatever and it hits Iron Man, you're not playing him till turn 5 anyway, so maybe not a big problem. We also have Team Clash Valentina. This is a 2-1. This is a great way to get out, a super cheap way to lose early like we talked about with Hood, but now you've got it for a Thunderbolt itself. On reveal, add a random Thunderbolt to your hand and give it -1 cost. I'm assuming that is not just this set of Thunderbolts, but potentially from the pool of all Thunderbolts, but certainly having an extra Thunderbolt that can get +2 power that's also cheaper seems nice. This also just leads into your game plan rather well. And Valentina is our final Thunderbolt. So this one's really intriguing to me as a set of cards. I think I just like the raw power buff these get. I think that's going to be sleepy good. It's just going to be about that manipulation of locations and positioning and deck building that's going to be challenging. But I do see some potential for this one. I think some people could play this in spicy ways. I think Annihilus is a natural path, even if not necessarily a Thunderbolt. Still, you know, a way to build your deck out that makes some sense. So this does seem rather powerful and intriguing to me. So moving on here to the Guardians of the Galaxy. The Guardians here have this cool ability. All cards reveal with +1 power at the glowing locations. So I guess each turn you're going to get a random glowing location, kind of like, what is that, Sanctum Showdown or whatever. That is going to count for opponents' cards as well. I guess if you're playing a Guardians mirror match, I don't know if that like doubles up in one spot or you get 2 separate locations marked, but could be an absolute fiesta in a Guardians mirror match. But either way, basically, this is a little trick that encourages your opponent to play to the glowing location. So that if they do, you're going to have Guardians cards that work much like the regular versions where they get a bonus effect if you predict where the opponent plays. As you can see here with Team Clash Drax, if your opponent played a card here this turn, double this card's power. So, you know, you get a double benefit. You get not only the +1 from playing at the glowing location, but then your cards also realize that extra bonus. The opponent has some real decisions like, man, is it worth +1 to go for the Guardians? But then also, it's like, if people decide it's not worth it to risk it because they don't want to empower your Guardians, and you also create still kind of a 50-50 in the other locations as well, right? So it becomes this little mind games. You might be able to benefit kind of either way, just because like, hey, I'm still gonna, you know, have a better chance to guess where they're playing, even if they're not playing into the glowing location. But sometimes they might decide it's worth it if they have those Captain Carters, the Iron Mans, or whatever. They might say, yeah, whatever, I'll just net this power and be a benefit. Also keep in mind, you know, like there will be locations in the mix as well where some decks won't want to play to certain locations. That might funnel them into the glowing location as well. So just, I don't know, crazy mind games. But Drax here, doubling this card's power makes him a 3/8, which is nothing crazy, but pretty solid. And of course, that could play really nicely with any kind of additional hand buffs or the Guardians location buff. Every extra little buff increments that even further. We also have Team Clash Gamora. She's a 5/7 on reveal. If your opponent played a card here this turn, destroy their lowest cost card here, which that's actually a pretty crazy powerful effect potentially, because they might not have a really low cost, low power thing there. They might have a big thing that's the only card there, and you get a crazy good destroy. But, you know, again, the opponent's going to be able to identify the really threatening Guardian moments. It's like, oh, it's turn 5. That's the Gamora turn. I cannot play into Gamora. So I'm a little worried about this one where it's like really swingy, whether it's good or not, because a 5/7 is not very good, but a 5/7 that destroys is crazy good. That gives the opponent like a better decision point to make, basically playing around this in essence. We also have Team Clash Groot here. This one's cool. A 4/10. On reveal, discard a non-guardian card from your hand unless your opponent played a card here this turn. So if you have all guardians, I guess this is just no downside at all. It's just a big old 4/10, which is awesome. That's big and cool. You also could technically run a non-guardian card that has a beneficial discard effect. You know, like you have Weapon H in your deck. I'm assuming he's not a guardian. So, you know, you get Weapon H, you discount your Weapon H or whatever. You know, there's probably better examples. Swarm, whatever, right? So you could actually kind of use this as a benefit and not a downside, which is kind of cool. But anyway, just really nice 4/10. Team Clash Mantis here is a 1/2. On reveal, if your opponent played a card here this turn, give a guardian in your hand -2 cost. So cost discounts, really fantastic. Could create some more surprising moments around those big key cards like Gamora. You know, this one's definitely 1/2 where you're just happy to get the +1 power on it. You don't necessarily have to hit on this. It might still just be worth it in that instance to get the +1. So, you know, a little more of a freebie here, I guess, compared to some of the others. We've also got Team Clash Rocket. He starts as a 1/3, so pretty good stat line to start. On reveal, if your opponent played a card here this turn, draw a Guardian, which it would be very nice to draw some Guardians of the Galaxy for sure. Like, good cheap card draw is great, but again, how often is this hitting? I guess I do like that the floor on this is higher, so if you miss, it's not a big deal. Just getting a 1/4 off the location might be nice enough. Anyway, thinking about other cards that probably go into the Guardians pool, like Adam Warlock is one of those cards that can kind of nudge your opponent around. Nebula, Rocket, and Groot. You could do Jean Grey stuff where you just put Jean Grey and they have to play a card into Jean Grey. She's not a Guardian, but, you know, a card that could fit well into the deck. So, you know, Cosmo even, good way to maybe nudge opponents a little bit where it's like, I can't play into the Cosmo. I don't want to play into the Guardians location. There's one spot left. You call it your shot there. So there could be some ways to kind of, again, nudge the influence a little bit. So this one's weird. I think that the best payoff cards here, like Gamora and Drax, probably, I don't know. I think it's going to be easier to play around those. The rest maybe aren't necessarily that good. I don't know. Is the +1 power of just constantly playing to the Guardians location when the opponent doesn't enough to like net you an advantage? Maybe. I'm kind of in the middle on this one. I think probably take some really skilled players and a cool deck to really get the max out of this, but it might not need the max. You might just get kind of +1 all the time because the opponent's scared to play there, and maybe that's enough. So our final Team Clash team here is Spider-Verse. This one is about moving. You get +2 energy if one of your Spider-Verse cards moved last turn. So as long as you keep moving things turn after turn, you can basically get like a Wiccan effect all the time, which is pretty great. You're probably not going to be moving stuff on turn 1 all that often, but, you know, probably moving on turn 2, which means, you know, maybe kicking off a chain on turn 3 where you kind of have a Wiccan from turn 3 on with +2 energy. I'd say maybe not every single turn, but pretty consistently, which lets you get some big stuff, lets you get more move things together. Of course, we know there are a lot of spider-themed move cards as well. We're going to see, of course, the core cards here, but there's a lot beyond that that could support this. Starting things off here, though, with Ghost Spider. She's a 1/2. On reveal, the last card you played moves here. If it's a Spider-Verse card, this gains +2 power. So this is basically just kind of the original Ghost Spider, but she gets, you know, +2 power if you've got Spider-Verse synergies making her a 1/4, which, I mean, that's great. We know Ghost Spider is really powerful. Great move enabler. And I think this one remains a great move enabler, which has extra upsides because of your Spider-Verse ability. You've also got Team Clash 2099. He's a 5/8. With on reveal, for each time your cards moved this game, give +1 power to one of your cards. So kind of like a Kahori effect, but with movements. So it could be like a big payoff where you push, who knows, 5 extra power out, 10. I don't know about 10, but maybe with Hercules you could get to 10. Like with the stuff bouncing around like crazy, Silk bouncing around like crazy. Extra energy too means you could actually play this kind of earlier. You could maybe even hit like a Human Torch with this. Human Torch won't be a Spider-Verse card, but you still might want to run it if your deck's running a bunch of move stuff. Getting him buffed early on thanks to some extra energy allows him to scale up quicker. I think that's pretty cool, actually. I think If you go for one of those mass move decks, Ezekiel, Silk, it's Hercules, this could pump out some pretty crazy numbers, because Hydra Stompers can get to like 10 plus extra power easily. That means this is also 10 plus extra power on a 5/8 body. Like, that's some pretty big and pretty unpredictable numbers. It could be hard for your opponent to play around. We've also got Agony, still a 1/3. After you play a card here, merge this with it, and then if it's a Spider-Verse card, move it away from here. So basically a way to potentially get some extra move procs. You can also technically play this in a merge deck with Man Spider, I guess. Moving him's not necessarily super helpful, other than, getting some extra energy, but you could maybe pivot away from move and into like a big Man Spider deck with all this extra energy, almost like a ramp build instead. But just using this on a Spider Punk or whatever also might be totally fine. Get your Spider Punk extra move, steal some extra power, stack things up, proc your Spider-Verse. I think you're really happy here with all of that as just a nice 1/3. We've also got Team Clash Anti-Venom. He is a 4/6 here with on reveal, set the cost and power of your deck's top card to 0 until that card moves. So you get to play something, maybe big. You get to play it super cheap for 0, but it has 0 power until you move it. So like, if you proc 1, move on it, put it in the Madam Web location, you get to reset those stats. It could be pretty nice. I think that's a cool idea. You also might not even care with stuff like 2099. Like, it's great if it has 8 power, but also maybe its on reveal is good enough that it doesn't have to have 8 power. But rewards, again, big cards, which also are rewarded by having extra energy from Spider-Verse. So kind of a 2-for-1 on deck building there, where you get to encourage some bigger things. We also have Team Clash Scarlet Spider, 3/4 here. A little bit cheaper, which is always nice for activate cards, I think. Activate, add a clone with the same power to another location, then move this to a 3rd location. So an extra move, which is great for Spider-Verse. Just, 8 power in total as well for 3 drops. Does have some scaling on something, like an Agony too. You put the Agony on this, you're talking about a 3/7 that duplicates, which is great. Any other buffs could also play into that. Stuff like, I don't know, Aranya or whatever might be an additional way to give this some extra juice, which is nice. And then we have one final card here, the Team Clash Symbiote Spider-Man 4/6. Activate, merge one of your cards here into this. Replace that card with a Spider-Verse card from your deck. So you get 2 things happening here, right? You get to merge, which maybe another Man Spider thing happening. I don't know. Maybe just a extra power hit. Does not work with Scarlet Spider because activate into activate doesn't work well. But on top of that, once that card has merged, you also get to just pull a big card from your deck, potentially. It could be a small card, but if you have big stuff because you're playing more towards the ramp style, you just get to pull a big thing out of your deck. So, you kind of get a 2-for-1, 4/6, and cheat something out of the deck, maybe that big 2099. Now, that said, there is kind of a weird thing happening here. We almost have 2 sides to this package. You kind of have this ramp package, you kind of have this move package, and I don't think all the cards really work that well together. Like, this doesn't really technically play with move stuff at all. I mean, I guess like Human Torch or something getting some power is kind of a neat idea, right? Like, there's a few things that benefit there, of course, but I don't know. It's just like, it's like a little bit split in half. I'm a little curious if you want to go for the full move route. Does this card feel kind of left out? Does Anti-Venom feel left out? If you go for a big deck, how many move things can you have in there? I don't know. That leaves it a little bit at odds for me. I also think the plus energy just becomes a bit of a deck building and resource check challenge, where it's like, I gotta have enough stuff to spend all this energy. That feels like it could be a little weird too. So this one to me feels a little less cohesive than the rest of the Team Clash decks. I could see this one being a bit problematic for that reason. I also wanted to acknowledge that I noticed the lighting, like they put all these on this like spacey background, which is cool for branding, right? Like you want to have the branding, but they didn't update the lighting on the characters to match. They all like, they have their like normal base edge lighting, this rim lighting that's like yellow, which most characters do have kind of a yellow rim lighting. Works better here because there's some yellow in the background, but it looks really weird on this one. I'm just saying, for my thumbnails, I update this. I update the lighting to match the setting, or the whatever I do to change them, right? Because I'll merge 2 characters together and sometimes the lighting on the head won't match the body. I go in and I update that. I manually go in and select all of that yellow border and recolor it to match. Like I would have done the top half here to red and the bottom half on his legs to blue to match. Just a thought, just a thought. It could have been done. Maybe they have rules with like altering the art or something. Marvel would have to give approval. I'm not saying it had to be done. But just a thought that I go to the trouble, and I notice here that they didn't. But you know, it's worth it. It makes the thumbnails look really sharp. I didn't used to do that, but I do nowadays, and I think it makes a big difference. Anyway, this total side note. Let's go ahead and I guess rank these teams. The ones I think are going to be the best, the ones I think are going to be the worst. My number 1 team is Avengers. My number 2 team is Thunderbolts. My number 3 team is Guardians. My number 4 team is X-Men. My number 5 team is Spider-Verse. And yeah, that's my guess on the Team Clash cards. Let me know what you guys think about these. What kind of decks are you excited to build? If, again, you have any additional details that have come out since I recorded this video a week early, please feel free to share those down in the comments below. Corrections, anything else. Again, I'm getting ahead here for a 2-week trip I'm taking. I'll be recording some videos from the road, but I also wanted to schedule some ahead early where I could. So that's what you're seeing here today. But yeah, share those down below. Check the comments to see if I got anything wrong here as well if you're just watching. See if there's been any changes or updates. But yeah, share your thoughts. Thanks much, as always, for watching. Good luck out there in the Team Clash, and I guess I will see you around.